And we are live. Welcome everybody to the Fantasmagorium presents Lightsabers, Blasters, and Droids. This is where Kat and I review this week's episode, or the newest episode, of The Mandalorian. Today we're doing Season 3, Episode 2, The Mines of Mandalore. I did take the liberty of grabbing a bunch of slides so we can kind of walk through the episode. But I want to introduce Kat. Hey, Kat, how you doing?
Hey, pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, we just got done doing a double feature review about an hour ago. That was fun, non-spoilery. Check it out on the channel if you'd like. I'll also come back. I think Sunday afternoon. We'll put up a time on the channel to do the full spoiler review for both of those. But for now, let's dive into The Mandalorian. So right off the hop, to coin a phrase our good buddy Scotty uses all the time, I really like this episode, but after watching it, I really wish they would have either combined episode 1 and 2 into one long episode, or dropped both of these at the same time. I feel like that kind of check-in show that we got last week would have benefited with kind of what happened in this episode. I think it would have been a lot more satisfying as a premiere to drop these two episodes together. What are your thoughts?
I feel like the first episode was just wholly unnecessary. It literally didn't accomplish anything. It's just reiterating what we are. The only two bits of information is that Din Djarin has come by this green crystal from who knows where. They still didn't tell us in the second episode where he's got it from.
Right.
And then we see that Bo-Katan has been abandoned, or maybe she left it. Like, there's a mystery there. The second movie doesn't resolve, or the second episode doesn't answer either of those questions. And the second episode feels like half an episode, given how it ends. So so far it's a bit mishmashy.
Yeah. No, I agree. I do think it would have benefited if we had gotten these two together, but we didn't. So I do feel this is a way more satisfying episode. I don't know. I don't think you're caught up with the Bad Batch, are you?
No.
Okay. Well, when you do, we'll start sneaking some of those into these reviews too. The Bad Batch this week was really good as well. So I felt really satisfied with both Star Wars properties that we got this week. But still, we don't. I think we know where we're going with this season. I think it's going to be basically the reconstitution of Mandalore. Who's going to rule? Most likely, all these disparate groups kind of coming together. And focused a lot on Mandalore and the rebuilding of Mandalore. I think that's what we're getting. I don't know if we're going to get much more than that. It looks like it's pretty singularly focused on that, which is cool. This was kind of the setup and kind of the conceit of not only Rebels, but also going back into Clone Wars, that the destruction of Mandalore, and then kind of we were hoping that that's what we were going to get at some point in the future, which seems to be now, that rebuilding of Mandalore.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll be able to rebuild it, because it does seem like a lost cause. I mean, you're going to have a lot of capital behind rebuilding Mandalore, which it doesn't seem like the characters have. I did find it odd, though, that it seemed like from the first episode and things they alluded to in season 2 that returning to Mandalore and going on this was going to be like a huge task. And It feels like something he just did in a couple hours. Okay, we'll go down there, and we'll just get in the water or whatever. And even in the episode, when he decides that he's going to go further down into the bowels of the city after screwing up the first time, it doesn't feel like it's an ordeal at all.
Right.
And yet the way they've been building this up, it's like that. Yes, there's the mystery of what is Mandalore like, and we get there and we see that it is pretty much a ghost town, save for some scavengers. But it's like I don't feel that, because again, unless they find somebody who can bankroll the hell out of it, I don't see how they're going to be able to salvage Mandalore itself. Like Bo-Katan's planet seems much more better off. It's not, and then even Concordia is probably doing better. I mean, we haven't been there yet in the series, but
right.
And they didn't really give us any hints yet as to what exactly happened, because Mandalore, as we saw in the Clone Wars, is a very white planet, like white dust and sand, and they have the big, terrariums on the surface for protecting the cities. And here we see mostly it looks like a planet of black granite. Like there's no white dust or white sand coverings anymore. It's got the green crystallization all over the place, and just the ruins look like it's been abandoned for longer than just a few decades. It's like what happened here, and they don't really come close to addressing either of those things. And if Bo-Katan had ended up with the Darksaber, I'd say that would have shown the direction the series was going. But since she doesn't, I guess it doesn't tell us the direction of where the show's going to go.
Right.
So
I mean, I assume so apparently Moff Gideon is responsible for the destruction of Mandalore.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately it's the Empire, but he's, the one with his finger on the trigger. So I assume that's how we get Moff Gideon back. And, in order to fight that, they have to, our team is going to have to get, reach out to their, come together. All these groups of Mandalorians are going to have to come together to fight out Moff Gideon. The problem with this show, they seem to gloss over a lot of, and this goes back to the very first season. They kind of gloss over a lot of story points and kind of just hit major milestones instead of explaining the Y2s and HAL 4s. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate. And that's why we kind of got spoiled with, at least I did, with Andor telling, a more nuanced story and with longer episodes and longer seasons. These short episodes, although this was longer, and next week's is almost an hour longer. I think it's probably the longest of the season, and maybe longest of the series. But this was, I think, 45 minutes, minus the pre-roll and the credits and the end credits.
Yeah, again, I don't really mind how short the episode is, so long as it feels like a solid episode. And this didn't, right, because it feels like it ends rather abruptly. It feels like it's only at like the halfway point, if you will. It's trying to end on this shocking cliffhanger moment,
right?
And it just kind of, but to me, it just felt like it kind of ended right when you have that bit, but it didn't feel like the natural ending for that episode. Given again, there's only 8 episodes in a season. Yeah. So I doubt there's going to be a time jump or a significant jump. We're going to continue from this, and if they continue at the rate they're going, I mean, they could have accomplished both of these first 2 episodes in just 1 episode. Really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's no reason to stretch that into 2 episodes. It's like, oh, well, we've caught on to people noticing that we have filler episodes, so let's just stretch it out longer so it doesn't feel like that as much, I guess. I don't know.
Right. They could have lopped off the whole beginning of, and we'll kind of go through the slides here. This, I don't know why we needed to go back. Apparently we needed this droid because starfighters don't have measurement instruments on them, I guess, to check see if the air is polluted or not, or is safe. So we have to go get an astromech droid for some silly ass reason. But it's all so we get this character who I hate, always hated her, never liked her, and there we go. I think the actor, I have no problem with Amy. What's her name? Amy Sedaris. No problem with her personally. I think she overacts this part though, and it's just
yeah, it's too much.
It's just too much.
It's kind of like a stage production where you're trying to overact to reach the people way back in the nosebleed section, you know?
Right.
And then again, the fact that it's R5, I'm like, okay, it's cute that it's R5 again from the original movie, but it keeps going back to that well of making the galaxy a smaller place.
Yeah.
It's like, plus it's clear that he went there because he wanted an assassin droid that's going to protect the child and just be guns ablaze. R5 is not that by any stretch of the imagination. Even Din Djarin's smart enough to know that. And he accepts her, BS explanations to take R5 anyway. And it's like, Din, that this isn't the only place that you can go to shop around here. Like, she even mentions at one point, oh, you're here to hook up with Boba Fett? And it's like, yeah, go ask Boba Fett. You helped him and came to save his ass in Mos Espa, so why not get him to help you with this vision quest, considering how relatively easy the vision quest turns out to be? Right. You could have brought that extra muscle, or just he could have hooked you up with another assassin droid or something that.
I mean, so we get this. We didn't need any of this. So we didn't need this, the Rodian, whatever, who cares? Obviously this is why, in my opinion, this shot right here is why we had that whole beginning. Right. Is that sequence is just to get the little pop from Baby Yoda. He flips out into her arms, which was silly in my opinion. Like, whatever. Yeah. This whole sequence is just, in my opinion, not needed.
And the way she pawns it off on him, where she's like, "Oh, he's ripe for adventure," and I'm like, "Okay, Din Djarin, you still know what an astromech is." And while R2 is certainly more adventurous than most astromechs, it's like, you don't need to take a huge thing like that with you just to measure the air. It's like, there's got to be other things in the Star Wars galaxy you could use that can accomplish both the task of measuring the air and being an assassin droid. And this ain't it.
Right. So that could have, So, but anyways, this is what we got. They could have lost.
Like when he fires up the engines, and he finally catches her in the lie, where he's like, "I thought you said this was up for adventure." It's like, "Oh, no, I can't hear you." It's like, yeah, shut off the engine then. Call her on it right then and go to Boba Fett. And it's like, no.
This is why I just that whole, and so when the episode started out this way, I'm like, oh no, Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, oh, this is what we're gonna get the whole episode, this nonsense. So I was like, oh man, hopefully not. So luckily for me, the tone changed, everything changed when we get off Tatooine. I don't know why we have to go back to Tatooine all the time in the show, but that's just what they do. So we're flying out to flying away on our mission, and here we go, title card for the Mines of Mandalore. Yay, right? So here we are, but we're back on Mandalore.
Yeah, and look at just the shots there, how vastly different the environment is.
Right.
It makes me wonder, is this crystal like did they use something like the World Devastators from the Legends canon to just scorch whatever sand or whatever was left of the surface to expose all this crystal and granite? It's like,
right. So on our planet, when we ignite thermonuclear devices, sand turns to glass, usually green glass, thermosite, I think it's called, something like that. So I think that's why we get the glass and why we're seeing this. I think all that white sand, whatever they used to devastate this planet, turned all of that beautiful white sand into green glass.
That's a good point. That's probably what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So some kind of not planet killer, because obviously it didn't, but it laid waste to the environment. And that's what and obviously that sprung the idea that it's a toxic environment and it's cursed and you can't go there and all that.
Yeah.
So we land, and this is kind of where, so far they're getting better at using the volume stage,
mm-hmm.
but there's still a little peekaboo. Especially here, I'll go back real quick. This is kind of a far off shot. There'll be a shot that's coming up that you get more baby Yoda goo goos and gagas. R5, and then
that's a great shot.
Yeah, so Din walks into the caverns, into the and this shot is great.
What's interesting about this shot too is that when you saw Mandalore in the Clone Wars, the cities are in these terrariums, and we understand that they go deep down underground as well as we saw, but you didn't see all the rock and the granite permeating through it, but we see that now.
Right. And I wonder if that's because of whatever devastation happened, or we just didn't see it previously, and they're just showing it, a more detailed.
But that's just so cool, because it looks like some ancient lost city,
It really does.
Getting like Indiana Jones vibes from this.
Totally. I really love this shot. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously we have to have some monsters to fight. So
Oh, yeah, my first thought, I'm sure it was yours too, Steve. Morlocks.
yeah, right. Exactly. So we have to have some monsters to fight. These green four-eyed whack jobs. Baby Yoda's still out here waiting for Daddy to say it's okay to come in. What I really liked about this, and we'll talk about this when Bo-Katan comes back into the picture, but I like the labored use of the Darksaber.
Mm-hmm.
Din still doesn't know how to use this weapon. He's still using it as a bludgeon instead of the, you know, kind of the you know, artistical flow kind of weapon. And you'll see that in contrast when later on in the episode when Bo-Katan uses the Darksaber,
right?
Because she's had so much practice with it and had it for so long, she knows how to wield it. But he doesn't, and I like the fact that he doesn't automatically know how to just wield this thing and just kick ass with it.
Yeah.
He labors with it, but he does get the job done, and he kicks their ass, and he comes back out. And you know, R5 puts up the schematic and says, you know, look, we're good, all good, air's breathable, no problem. So now it's okay for Grogu and Daddy to go on their little mission.
You know, I would have thought in hindsight that the reason he went to Pelimato to get a droid, because again, he can't just the idea that he trusted what she said just off the bat for that one little hanger doesn't have it. I'm going to get. I thought the reason he would have gone there is to have her babysit the kid while he went on what he expected to be a dangerous mission.
Right.
As opposed to taking the kid, because the fact that he left the kid in the N1 means he didn't want the kid there for the sake of using the Force to bail him out. He still thinks it's dangerous for the kid. So, well, you know, the kid's safe back there because, you know, nobody really, or better yet, just leave the kid with Boba Fett for a bit, you know?
Right.
Because clearly he's expressing.
I wonder if there's some part of him that still, you know, because he does it. Well, we didn't touch on this, but when they're in hyperspace flying to Mandalore, he's telling Grogu about being a navigator, and he's trying to you know, ingratiate him into being a Mandalorian. This is what it is to be a Mandalorian. You know, we're good navigators. You got to know how to chart the stars and all this kind of stuff. So I wonder if part of him really wants to take him on this pilgrimage, for lack of a better term, in order to, you know, show him this is the way, right?
And that's also a bit of an interesting way to look at it, because he's not forcing Grogu to wear any type of armor. He never asked the armor to make anything for Grogu, like a helmet or anything.
The only thing is the chainmail, right?
Right, because as we saw in the prologue the beginning of the first episode, it's okay that the people being indoctrinated don't have their masks on yet, because they're getting theirs for the first time.
Yeah.
But Grogu just got the chainmail. He hasn't gotten. I mean, I'm sure the armor would have made him a helmet if he'd asked for it. Because the fact that Din, even though he's already taken off his mask before, the fact that he's kind of regressing in a way, like he's still,
right.
Season 2 felt like he kind of got over that, but now he's back to hiding his face, and you'd think he'd want to do that for Grogu, but he's not, which I found kind of surprising.
Right, because it feels to me like he's still applying the tenets of that cult to his everyday life. But I don't know that he's sure if that's the right path for Grogu or not. Although he does consider him to be a Mandalorian, and he's going to be a Mandalorian. But maybe, I don't know. So maybe some of that Bo-Katan, you know, is rubbing off on Din. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. That's going to be interesting. Another cool shot where they're kind of looking out over the city. These shots I thought were really good in the show.
Well, yeah, really well done.
Yeah. And so they go down and start walking through the tunnels. And just kind of some cool shots. I thought, you know, Lone Wolf and Cub walking through the dark and trying to figure it out. So it comes upon this buried kind of helmet, which actually I think turns out to be I'm not sure whose helmet this is for sure. I'm sure Alex Gaiman or somebody way smarter about about this kind of stuff probably knows better than I do. But who knows? For all we know, this could be the first Mandalore. But to get the helmet, but I think this, I'm not sure because it doesn't really make a point. But this looks like a trap, right?
Well, I think the idea is more so that it's more evidence of yet another massacre.
Right.
Like it's not that Mandalore was abandoned. Like you said, the crystals are probably the result of some thermonuclear attack. And like the way this is just completely covered over, almost in like the aftermath of an atomic bomb, like, the type of blast, because you can tell that's not just dust on it anymore. That's like total effect of the blasting on the actual graded into the metal.
Right.
So it's like, a Holocaust of sorts. Like there was like kind of like they mentioned in the first season that Moff Gideon is responsible for this, Holocaust on Mandalore, and you're kind of seeing that.
Yeah. And that sprung the trap for this crazy contraption.
I love this thing. It's like
awesome.
Like, see, people are saying, wouldn't it be great to see hot toy of that? It's like, yes, right. It would. I like that it's, it's biomechanical, but they don't strip back all the layers to show what it is. And vaguely, it reminded me of the aliens from Byron Haskins' War of the Worlds. Except in that situation, it's reversed, where it's mostly a biological creature with an android eye. In this case, it's reversed.
Yeah.
But I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah. It's cool. In fact, we'll get to the actual creature that's inside of this thing here in a minute. Oh yeah, this guy. I think this is one of the creepiest creatures that we've ever seen in Star Wars. It was amazing. I was like, this is crazy.
I was getting vibes from the old Galaxy of Fear book series where they explore the ship with the army of killer robots, or something that they alluded to even in the Legends of Luke Skywalker when 3PO gets kidnapped again by the killer robots and Luke having to go save him from it. And this the kind of nightmare fuel type descriptions of it. And here we're actually seeing it in live action.
Yeah, it was really awesome work by the designers. I thought this was a great. It's kind of unfortunate that it gets killed off so soon. This would have been cool to see. Kind of delve into.
We might see more of them because we're not sure if these are exclusive to Mandalore. The thing is, I got the vibe that somebody made these things and put them there to do the scavenging jobs for them.
Yeah, not
the Morlock creatures because they seemed a lot more primitive. Who knows, maybe, but I'm guessing that because I'm not seeing any of the. I mean, the fact that this is clearly built, it's not like it grew the mechanics of it. So I didn't see any foundry where it would have been built.
Do you think that this might be some kind of remnant from when Darth Maul was in charge of Mandalore?
Probably 100%.
Yeah. Because it seems like something that the Sith would build, right? It's like a reverse Grievous in a way, or even kind of like Grievous. So it seems like something the Sith might build. So I wonder if this is a remnant of something that Darth Maul had instituted when he was.
It does have very Grievous vibes. It feels very skeletal and partly biomechanical again. So it is like that, but it feels like scary,
Yeah.
And with the lighting, it's like.
So we got that. Din's caught in this contraption up here. He can't move. He can't do anything. Yeah. And this guy, here's another good shot of this. Just freaky and cool. Which I'm surprised. It surprises me. It's sometimes this show surprises me where they go. Like this is a pretty creepy.
Like even the bars sticking up from behind his head look like frills sticking out of his back or something.
Right. Crazy. Cool. And Grogu is like, oh, Daddy. And so he's like, go.
Yeah, I liked that Grogu did try and use the Force to get him out of there because on the one hand, we saw him stop the Mudhorn on the first season, which took a lot.
Right.
That knocked him out. And he seems to be consciously aware of the fact that I can't afford to knock myself out saving him from this. I need to go get help.
Yeah.
Which is like.
It cracks the thing and it doesn't really work out. And he's like, go get Bo. Go get Bo-Katan. So Grogu hauls ass out of there, which is kind of cool to see him hauling ass in his little sphere, whatever the hell that is. And this asshole, You know, he meets this guy. It's like, you ain't going anywhere. And Baby Yoda ain't having none of that. Grogu's like, nah. So he just tosses this guy like a rag doll. So he gets free, which is cool. And he jumps in the ship and heads off to see Bo-Katan, who's still, pissed. And
I love that shot, the way the throne, the design of it also reminds me of what was it, the Republic logo, the way it kind of comes down to the spikes and frills on the bottom, and it's like the inverted Mandalorian visor, and even the shape of the throne gives a little bit of Grievous vibe as well. It's kind of interesting looking.
Really cool. And she's still wallowing in her whatever, she's angry and pissed and just
you notice how in that shot there that he still hasn't put proper paneling on this ship. He hasn't repaired it to make it look nicer or bulkier, because it's like there's obvious holes in the engine there which are vulnerable to attack, and it's like, no, I'm good.
It's like, doesn't matter. It's only been 2 years. Who cares? Yeah,
exactly.
So Bo's like, you can tell she's irritated.
Yeah.
She's like, I told you not to, I wanted to be left alone, right?
Yeah.
So and this is like, I told you I wanted to be left alone. That's her I want to be left alone face. And then obviously, boom, we get another, oh, Baby Yoda. We get a lot of those in this episode. Yeah. Oh, Baby Yoda, oh, cutie. There's little coos and shit. That at some point they got to make this little fucker talk, because it's just a little cooing and stuff is cute, but man, we're 3 seasons in.
That's kind of how I feel about unlike in the comics, when anytime Groot blows up or whatever, he grows back like that, and in the movies he hasn't been back to regular Groot since 2014, since the first Guardians movie. I'm like, come on, you're dragging this out, man.
Yeah, totally. And I get it. It sells toys. It's people watch because of it. I get it. But for me, I'm ready for this little guy to start speaking. Yeah. Anyway, so she's like, where's your dad? Right? Let's go find him. So, killer ship, by the way. Love this ship. Oh, yeah. They get in her ship and take off to go rescue Din.
There's a good point that was brought up in the other review I was on with RM, and that, do you think when R5 plugged into her computer that he downloaded any secrets and information? Because we know astromechs are good at that.
Right.
We found out something. So that would be something. And these ships are kind of that's a more beat up, classic Mandalorian fight that we saw from Clone Wars. So it's cool to see that in live action.
Yeah, I dug it. It's a really cool ship.
Again, it looks like the frill things on the side of Grievous's face.
Yeah, there's a lot of visual cues that they're bringing into the live action stuff, and I think there's a lot of visual cues they even did just with a lot of the look of that whole prequel era. They used a lot of.
That's a funny shot there, because usually when the astromech droid is in the cockpit, is just standing up normally. He's like leaning back in his.
Yeah, he's like. So they're rolling. So this is one of those little peekaboo. This is when you can tell they're using the volume. They're really getting good at using the volume stage. Mm-hmm. But like this, when they go behind this little rock right here, and you can just tell. You know what I mean? It's just there's no getting around it. But that's the only time it really bothered. It didn't really bother me, but it's the only time I noticed. It's a little, go behind the peekaboo rock, and then now you're in. Now we're down in the depths. Now, so basically, we're seeing the same exact thing twice, and this is what I've heard some people mention that they didn't like. That why are we seeing we see Din and Grogu go down into the depths of this cavern, and now we're repeating those steps with Bo-Katan and Grogu. I think they do it for 2 reasons. One, to show how badass Bo-Katan is.
100%.
We're still kind of introducing her to fans that may not have seen either or both, Clone Wars and Rebels. But I think it also shows the difference between the two Mandalorians, right? And the fact that, Bo-Katan says this to Grogu a little later on in the episode. You didn't think your dad was the only Mandalorian, did you? Right. So
Yeah,
I think that's why they do this repetitive nature of this. I think it's specifically to show those contrasts.
and it's also that I think, I mean, she's always insisted that there's nothing here, but I don't know if she's ever gone down this far before. Like, she's seen the surface and knows what it's like, but it's also getting her. I mean, yeah, we don't need to see her face because, again, Star Wars is really great at making these neutral masks so you can read whatever expression you want based on the body language, and I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. So we go down. This guy's, getting ready to jab Din and do some kind of whatever he's
suck
doing.
His blood or whatever.
Right. Taking his blood. We'll get to that part too, but. So we're gonna once again we see these
the Morlocks.
I'm just gonna call them that.
Yeah,
Morlock guys.
Yeah,
because we gotta do that. We gotta show how badass Bo-Katan is, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. We get this. So when the one-eyed guy starts his pump up, we've seen enough medical shows to know that this is not going to be good, right? We're like, oh no. So we get the pump action going. He's getting ready to stick Din with this needle and start pumping his blood out, and that's exactly what they do. And this is not a good position to be in if you're Din.
No, and I'm like, I wonder if it's like a vampiric thing because this robot has like the eye that's actually living, and maybe it needs more blood.
Maybe it needs the blood. Maybe.
But I love how dark this is for Star Wars, and I love
right. Again,
because this is back to Galaxy of Fear and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I like it too. Because man, look at that.
It's awesome.
Like, am I watching Reanimator or am I watching Star Wars? So that's cool. Pumping the blood. Earlier, I didn't get this, but earlier you see when this thing is kind of getting set up to where he can do his experiment or whatever the hell he's doing with Din. You see that he throws the blaster and the Darksaber on the ground. So after Bo fights off a couple of Morlock guys and gets to where this is all happening, she's able to see the Darksaber on the ground, grab it with her. What do you call that? Her little. There's a word. There's a name. It's got a name. The grappling hook thing.
Oh yeah.
And grabs the Darksaber and starts going to town on this wacky creature. There's a good picture. The eye staring right at you. Like, this thing is whacked out. So she stabs it in the heart, a la in Grievous, and with the Darksaber, and thinks that's done. And although I didn't get, I should have pulled that. So this little thing, the head of it with the eye,
right?
So this part right here detaches from the body and skitters away.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's gross, like the Thing or something. It was crazy. Like, again, I'm like, we're watching Star Wars. This is awesome.
And again, it's like, I think you're right. It might harken back to the Maul period. This doesn't seem like something that the pacifist worlds of Mandalore would have had. And it doesn't seem like something Moff Gideon would bring there for any reason once he's, nuclear blasted the planet. So
they just hit and run, right? So yeah, I think for sure that's probably some kind of something the remnant from the Maul time and whatever he was doing underground.
Yeah.
So they basically, she saves him. They're camping out here, having a conversation. Nothing really big, some kind of. If you had grown up on Mandalore, you would have drinking this soup or whatever it was. Great. But Din's like, I'm gonna go bathe in the waters. I have to. This is part of my mission. So she's like, okay,
that's crazy.
That's crazy, but I'll take you. I'll take you anyways, because you don't know where you're going and I do. Okay.
Yeah.
So we get to the entrance of the mines of Mandalore, the waters, and there's this little plaque here, and she reads off the plaque, which is basically the oath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she reads the oath, which is kind of cool. I thought this was pretty cool part. And Din's like, all right,
well,
I get to complete my mission here.
Well, another thing that they talked about was how she told him that, look, this creed and everything, there's no reason for it, especially now. That was just placating superstitious people. And she's like, now that everything's destroyed, there's no need for any of this crap. And he's like, the opposite is true. It's precisely because we have no home anymore that the creed and the culture is the only thing that really identify us as Mandalorians. So it's like this very diametrically opposed viewpoints for these characters so far, which is
it definitely sets up that there's two distinct philosophies, right?
Yep.
And she's like, she was a part of the ruling class.
Right.
Basically, we just, all of this is to placate and keep people not in line per se, but
right,
but keep them in line. So he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go bathe and do my, he's got to do this for his, to cleanse himself so he can be, reborn into this cult that he's in. And he's, he gets in there. I think that was out of, those should have been flipped, but he gets out, about, waist high or so, and boom, drops right through the floor. Bo springs into action, jumps in after him, and this is where it's really cool. I didn't get a lot of slides here because of kind of at the end. I didn't want to grab too many, but this underwater sequence was shot beautifully. I don't know how they did it, but it's really well done, in my opinion.
For sure.
So she goes down. She grabs Din off the bottom of the, of the floor. She's starting to get him back up to the surface, and what do we see? She sees this big son of a bitch. What the mythosaur?
The mythosaur.
And the mythosaur, who is supposed to be a myth, is living down under this, in this, in the waters.
It's crazy because I've never seen it in live action or animation before.
No.
But I could see from that horn the minute I saw it, I'm like, oh my God. Because she mentions right before he gets in the water, the legend that, the original, Mandalore the Great went down there and tamed the mythosaur and made it safe for everybody. And that makes you wonder what the original name was. Because like you said, they called it mythosaur because it was supposed to be a myth.
Right.
And she didn't believe any of these things. And then seeing that is like, oh my God. I hit the floor. I'm like, wow.
Me too. I was shocked.
In Star Wars lore that these things have been extinct if they were ever real for, forever. So.
I mean, leave it to Filoni and Favreau to especially Filoni. This came from Dave Filoni.
Oh God, yes.
Like, dude, leave it to him to bring this, and bring us a live action version of the mythosaur, dude. I mean, that's badass. I was shocked too. I was like, this is great. Yeah. So she gets a glimpse of this thing while she's bringing Din up to the surface, and you can tell just by her mannerisms and the last shot of the episode, she's blown away.
Yeah, and she even paused a bit when she was down there looking at this thing, like, oh my God, this thing is
what?
real.
Right. What the?
I mean, that's a scene where I get, obviously you can't have the mask off in that instance. But I mean, it's kind of ridiculous anyway, because it's not like I didn't see any vacuum seal under the mask to protect you from the water, but that's a scene where I would have loved if we could have seen her.
Although Din does say in the beginning of the episode, he's going to pressurize his helmet.
Yeah. I would have loved if they could have done like an Iron Man shot where you could see inside the closed helmet and see the expression on her face when she saw that.
That would have been cool. Yeah, because she was flabbergasted.
And this is the part of the episode I also had an issue with, is that they're literally still in the process of catching their breath when it cuts to black. And it's like, it felt too abrupt. Like, it didn't feel like the end. Like you said, they spent a lot of time on, her going back down through the caverns and all that. And the first episode was mostly checking in filler and filler again on title. Here we go. And it's like, we're finally getting to a point that means something. and no, we're gonna stop. And it just felt, it didn't feel like you're right. If they'd combined the first two, it would be a more satisfying single episode than eating these two separately.
With this cliffhanger type deal, right?
Right. And I had mistakenly thought when I first watched this that she had the Darksaber now because he lost it, she got it, and I thought, oh, that's now that she's seen this and has the Darksaber, we know where she's going now. Right. And I thought that would set up the whole season. But the fact that he still has the Darksaber, he's always believed in what he's believed in. It hasn't changed as a result of the Mythosaur. She didn't believe it, and now she does. So it's like, how is that going to change her going forward? And because again, I'm still having a hard time picturing him sitting on the throne of Mandalore because he doesn't seem to be interested in that. Like this whole Vision Quest is about him earning the respect of the armor and the clan back, not about leading Mandalore. Where she wants to do it, Paz Vizsla still wants to do it, even though he lost his challenge.
Yeah. So are they setting up the reluctant, the leader who, the ruler who doesn't want the crown is the best for the job, or it's just, I don't know where they're going with it. That seems like what they want to do, but
right. Bo-Katan is a volatile character, and we've seen that from Rebels and Mandalore. Like when she flippantly says, "Oh, the children of the Watcher are to blame for what happened," and blah blah. It's like, well, so are you. It's like everybody kind of shares the blame here,
right? So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. I'm assuming Bo-Katan, at somehow, some way, is going to end up ruling whatever the new Mandalore is.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, maybe Grogu is going to be I don't know. He'll be the new ruler. But anyway, so so this is how the episode basically ends. There's one shot right after this where she's basically just staring back at the waters, still in disbelief. And then cut to credits. So that's your episode. It was a longer episode, and I thought it was a pretty good episode. We got some really cool stuff in it. But like Kat said, it would have been, and I think what I alluded to earlier is if this would have been a combined with the first episode and this one combined, cut out that middle nonsensical trip back to Tatooine. Tightened it up a little bit. This would have been a good cliffhanger first episode to lead into our second episode that really gets us going on what this.
Another thing about the return to Tatooine is, wouldn't it have made more sense to have that in the first episode?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it seems the last thing you should be doing in the preparation for Mandalore is going to try and recruit Bo-Katan. It's like, get all the stuff you need first and then go and get her. Don't get her and then say, okay, well, we got to go to Tatooine first. It's like, no.
No. Yeah, please no. God, no.
Yeah.
Just stop going back to Tatooine for nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't.
Unless you're going to go get Boba Fett, then we don't need to go back there.
No, and it seems like they're doing it now in each season just to get that character. I don't even know her name.
Peli Motto.
Yeah, just to get her one a scene.
I did like the idea that it's taking place during the Bunta Classic, the Bunta Eve, and you do
that was okay.
Pod racers that are like street racing down the street as a demonstration. But like, if you're going to mention the Bunta Eve, let's see the Bunta Eve and how those effects have been updated after, because that was back. They worked on that back in '98, released in '99. What would it look like to see a pod race today?
Yeah, right.
Can you imagine how popular it'd be if they did like a pod racing episode, but on another course? Like, if you ever played the Racer video game and the different courses and how wild and vast, that would be so awesome if they could go back to have an excuse to have a racing episode gambling thing. It would be epic to see that. Right. Go to Mongaza or Uvo 4 or Barunda, something like that.
The Barunda would be cool. All of it would be cool. Yeah. So that's the episode. Like we said, it's
better than the last.
It's better than the last, and we're going to keep watching. Where I'm just hoping that they get, I think, like I said last week, Andor. I'm going to steal something. I'm going to steal something from John Campea that I thought was right on the money. That he said, the Mandalorian shows us how fun Star Wars can be. Andor shows us how great Star Wars can be.
Exactly.
And I do believe that. I think that's right on the money. And and there's room for both.
Absolutely.
There's absolutely room for fun, pew pew Star Wars. And then there's room for nuanced long form storytelling, like we got more kind of I hate to say more adult, but kind of a more highbrow adult fare. Just like and just like there's also room for things like the cartoons, which I think other than Resistance, which wasn't that great, have been pretty good, especially Rebels. I loved Rebels. Bad Batch this season I like a lot. There's some really good episodes. In fact, in the Bad Batch, let's touch on this real quick. This week's episode is another episode that's focused solely on Crosshair. And these Crosshair episodes, these Crosshair-centric episodes, are really good. That really gets into the mind of how it shows how evil the Empire is. And the not only we've always known the Empire to be super racist against other alien species, but this shows just how much disrespect and how low they think of clones. And even though without them they would be nowhere, the disrespect, especially in this episode's really good. But it's so there. I think there's room for all of it. That's why I think Star Wars really does live on TV.
Yeah, it does seem really odd that the Bad Batch of all things would be the series that has that dark level stuff when you think about how goofy the initial premise is. And it's like it doesn't feel like it fits, but sort of. I mean, it does when it's more Crosshair centric rather than the Bad Batch are kind of over here and he's over here. Yeah. But I'll catch up before next week for sure.
I like we still get the mission of the week thing, but it's a lesser extent in season 2, which I like, because that was really kind of grating in the first season. The mission of the week was like, come on, let's move the story forward. It's almost like they hook you with the silly, they want to hook the audience with the silly concept. And then they tell these really cool dark stories, and they don't have to be dark, but these really cool intricate stories. And wait a minute, what? This is the Bad Batch? It's interesting the way they it's not a bait and switch, but it feels like that in a way, in a good way, right?
Whereas Tales of the Jedi, I thought was hit or miss. Like the Dooku stuff, I thought was great.
Yeah,
and the Ahsoka stuff, I thought was kind of But I think there's other room for stuff like
I really liked those. I really liked them all, but they were bite size. I found that while watching them, I'm like, I want more. Expand these, because those are great stories. I'm a sucker for prequel era storytelling. I don't think the movies were executed well, but the storytelling in the prequel era is amazing. And I'd love that era for storytelling. So any of that little nuanced backstory stuff and Dooku, all that Dooku stuff, and I'm a sucker for. I love the Queen's Peril books. Those are great books. Queen's Gambit, Queen's Peril, and the other one, E.K. Johnston books were really good. So I love that. I think that's awesome. So I do think there's a lot of TV's doing really good. I think Star Wars lives on TV. But there is a little news before we go. It looks like, and it's pretty definitive, that both the Kevin Feige led Star Wars movie and the Patty Jenkins movie, Rogue Squadron, shelved. I think we pretty much knew that Patty Jenkins one was not going to come to fruition.
I thought that one was the one that was going to get made, because once they canned Wonder Woman 3, she was available again.
Yeah.
And it's like in the aftermath of Top Gun Maverick, which makes that type of stuff really exciting for people, it's like cash in on that. Right. It's like I still don't get why they're not doing this. Like, is it because she went out of her way to insist that she had total creative control over Wonder Woman 84, where she didn't have total creative control over the first one, and then after seeing how WW 84 turned out, it's like, which is stupid logic to use. It's like, well, just because that didn't work doesn't mean nothing's ever going to work. Everybody's got a bad day at the office,
Exactly.
And Feige, I never believed in anyway, because he's doing this whole MCU trying to cram 3 phases in a few years stuff. It's like, that's not happening. And I also felt like
especially because I think what happened was when, because of the reception of Phase 4, I think Bob Iger said, listen, I want you to pull back from some of these, outlying projects and bring your focus back. I think there's a little bit of, because Feige was spread too thin, I think there's a little lack of focus in Phase 4. I don't know yet, because I think a lot of I think the entire Phase 4 was table setting for
but anyway, I think that I never believed the Feige project was going to happen anyway, because
I thought it was
one of those things they announced at the Investor Day when they were announcing a bunch of stuff that you could tell just wasn't going to happen, because they were trying to impress the investors and make them look like, hey, we're busy, but they're really not. Because it's like,
so there's the 2 that remain are Taika Waititi's, who now, it came out that he wants to write, direct, and star in, I believe.
Yeah, and he still has no clue what it's going to be yet. It's like, why are you announcing something if there's literally no inked paper of any kind? Even the paper to put ink to hasn't even been drafted yet, and they're already announcing this crap. It's like,
right. So, that's probably, so they're probably going to announce that at Celebration. And then the David Lindelof deal. So it'll be the Lindelof one, but that's the only 2 that are even still like in development. What, air quotes, in development, whatever the hell that means. So it's going to be at the very least 5 years until we get from Rise of Skywalker till we get a new Star Wars
right movie. And I think it'll be longer. I'm not sure if they'll have something else. Well, December 2024 is going to be Avatar 2, and that's Disney product now, so they're not going to compete with Star Wars on that. So the earliest would be December 2025, which is the alleged release date of the Taika Waititi thing. Yeah. And it's still plenty of time for him to come up with an idea and write it. But with Iger now rolling back, pulling back on the release dates, and I don't think they're necessarily going to rush the next movie, because again, they're doing I think they want to focus primarily on the Favreau Filoni, because this is a crossover thing. The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, the upcoming Ahsoka show, and then upcoming Skeleton Crew, and that's all going to build to whatever the crossover event is. And once they're finished with that, because I think there's plenty of room for both. There's room for TV, and Star Wars, which is made for movies as well. Yeah, because of the episodic nature of the Flash Gordon type of stuff. So there's definitely room for both. But with Filoni and Favreau being kind of their creative team right now, it's like, let them finish their universe. And like the news that broke a couple weeks ago that, whether or not the Lando series happened is totally up to Donald Glover. It's like, you announced that series as if it was a go and he was on board with it. And now it's like, well, I don't really know. And I'm like, I get that Donald Glover is really talented, but Lucasfilm is a much more major studio. They can put the ink to paper and say, hey, we want to do this. This is the date. Tell us. It's like the idea that they haven't figured that out yet. In the 2 years, 3 months since they announced it, tells me that it was just something that somebody made up and just slapped on there with no idea of whether or not it would actually happen. It's like, fans were excited about about him in Solo, so we'll just say we're doing a series to impress the shareholders, but we have no intention of actually doing it.
They've really got to get their act together over there, Lucas.
And now they're getting sued over the Acolyte. They fired the producer.
And I'll tell you what, from what I've seen and heard, it looks like she's got a case. So that's weird.
Right, but then again, I haven't seen the affidavit or what the if it's as black and white as she says it is. But
it may not be. It may be a little more nuanced. But from what I've seen, it looks like she's got a case, and it looks like she got summarily fired for no reason. But we'll see how that works out. Hopefully they get their house in order. They really need, because it's a mess.
Well, I think it starts with getting a new president of the company.
Well, yeah. So I think it's kind of common knowledge in Hollywood that after Indy 5, Kathleen Kennedy is gonna step aside. There has been a rumor that and who knows, that maybe the reason why the Feige movie's not happening is because they're going to put him in charge of Lucasfilm. I don't know. That seems like a lateral move to me. I don't know that that would be interesting. I know he's a huge Star Wars fan. I think he might even be a bigger Star Wars fan than
Yeah,
Marvel.
I know that's something that Campia says too. Oh, it's a lateral move. That doesn't make sense. Like, dude, it's still Lucasfilm. It's just Star Wars. Like, there's no next move you can make other than becoming the next CEO of Disney, which is not going to happen.
Or he could do Alan Horn's old job, right?
Yeah, but I mean, but the thing is that he's still there's no real heir apparent at Marvel right now that anybody really like. Who's going to take over that seat for the chief creative director of Marvel?
Yeah, it would have to be like Louis D. Esposito or who's the other lady?
Victoria Alonso.
Like
maybe
I would assume it's one of them.
The reason why I could picture him taking the Star Wars job because he loves Star Wars as much as he loves Marvel, and he's just as much a Star Wars nerd as Jon Favreau is.
Yeah,
and he would obviously be very good for it because he has his finger on the pulse of what the fans like. Yeah. But I don't picture him leaving Marvel in the midst of the multiverse saga, which he's been setting up and all of that, to go play in somebody else's sandbox. Like, I think he wants to finish that first. And again, I don't think he's not Harry Saltzman. All right. Harry Saltzman was a guy who was the co-producer with Cubby Broccoli in the first 9 Bond films, who got so deluded that he seemed to think that Bond was just the beginning of this bigger thing. And then he blew all his money on these bad investments, which eventually, cost him his stake in the company, and he had to sell it all off. I don't think that Feige is that. Like, I don't think he thinks that, this is Marvel's just the beginning. I'm going to move on to all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think he might be happy where he's at. He seems to be happy where he's at. And I don't even know. He may not even if he wants to move up. It may not be at Disney. I mean, he could go. He's the most successful producer of all time. So he could go run another studio, Sony or anywhere else. So I guess that's probably open to him as well. So I don't know if I buy that rumor. I think if they offered, he'd seriously consider it. But I think you're right. I think at least for now, Bob Iger wants him to right the ship with Marvel, and then they can talk about.
Plus, if you're going to leave, you want to leave it in a better situation than you want to leave it in a better situation than you found it, and he kind of built all of that from there. Whereas Iger came back probably not so much because the shareholders and stuff begged him to do it, but because he saw what was happening to everything he built. And he's like, I don't want that to be my legacy. I'm going to go back and fix this.
Right.
And Feige kind of has to, fix this whole multiverse or what the hell's going on with all of these rushed release dates and all that. Because one of the things Iger said on the earnings call was that we can't do quantity over quality. You're not going to keep subscribers or earn new ones by rushing out subpar content. Right. It's like, make it worth waiting for and they'll come for it. But I can picture him liking the challenge of going to Luke, because that's a whole different challenge at Lucasfilm. You have to get that house in order and fix it. I can totally picture him doing that if he wanted to, because it's a similar challenge. I mean, with Marvel, he had to build it kind of from the ground up because they were starting basically with a clean slate. They were ignoring the events of all the other Marvel Fox movies and doing a brand new thing. Lucasfilm's already in the midst of something that they can't really undo because everything, the canon and all that kind of crap. That would be a unique challenge that he would have to address. I could picture him being excited about doing that, even though on paper, yes, it's a lateral move, but it's a completely different challenge. That would be quite exciting to do.
It absolutely is.
I don't think he would want to leave Marvel until it's in really good standing, and I don't think he's in Harry Saltzman who's thinking, this is just the beginning. I have a hard time seeing that right now. So we'll see.
I mean, he may have his eyes. He may have designs on running a studio. I just don't know if it's going to be within the Disney.
He does run a studio right now.
He does. He runs the Marvel division. And he does have a lot of autonomy.
Right? Yeah, and Iger gave him
at least he did under Iger. He got a lot of that pulled away under Chapek. And
he got a lot of the autonomy back that Chapek took away from him, but. You still need to set that thing right, and I don't. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think, and I'd like to see him fix that, go out, and then if he wants to make a move after Phase 6 is done, then I don't see him going anywhere until after Phase 6.
Yeah, I don't see him go anywhere. Period. I think he recognizes that Marvel is one of the best jobs and one of $1 shot to do that, and I don't think he's going to leave.
He doesn't need to. I would like to. I would like to see somebody. In fact, I wouldn't be opposed to like James Gunn and Safran doing over at DC. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a co-leadership at Lucasfilm. Somebody on the business side and then somebody on the creative side, which I think might work.
Feige's been good at both of that at Marvel. It's just
he has, but I don't know how rare or unrare that is. He might have just had the right
it's because
amount of experience and skills.
He worked at the Fox Marvel movies and saw what was working and what wasn't working, and he actually knows the lore because he read all that stuff growing up.
Right.
Whereas a lot of these other executives don't know the shit at all. They just know marketing, and they're too egotistical and overvaluing their positions, which is why you had such stupid decision making over at the HBO Max thing, where they moved all their 2021 movies on HBO Max. It's so stupid to an outsider, to anybody. But again, these guys are so big-headed that we can't possibly replay. We can't do no wrong. We're perfect. It's like, no. It's like,
so probably I hope that would be cool if they did that. I don't know that they'll do that. Most likely it'll be an executive that we probably never heard of or heard once or twice in passing. I don't think it's going to be anybody that that's super popular that we know. I mean, for all I know, it could be Jon Favreau. I think he has the pedigree to actually run that organization. But we just, time will tell, I guess. We'll just have to see. I don't know anybody else in the organization or in Disney organization that it maybe even be somebody we've never heard before.
Yeah.
Which is fine as long as look, as much as I love Kathleen Kennedy as a producer, she's just not a good studio head. This job was not good for her. She had way too. I think she put way too much, or she gave way too much latitude to her directors and didn't lock them into being on the same page from the jump.
Well, yeah, because that was a story for a while where they hire a director, they work with him for a bit. Oh, we had to fire him. Oh, we had to fire him. We had to replace him. And it's like, I get that Disney was forcing these release dates on him, but it's like there's 365 days a year and there's 24 hours in a day. It's plenty of time to sit down in a room with somebody and make sure you're on the same page with whoever it is you're hiring,
Right.
When that's your one job as deciding the direction of the studio. Because the studio was pretty much running smoothly already. It was just the same department heads. They closed LucasArts, which had to happen because of the contract to the A games.
Right.
And things were still running smoothly. And that's why I felt that the movie should have been delayed longer. It's like, let her get a feel for what the company's doing first. What's it doing right? What's it doing wrong? Like Feige did over at Marvel before he started going down the whole road. Granted, you don't need to spend as much time as he did, like 10 years reorganizing that shit. Right. But Lucasfilm's already proved it can put out movies. So there's no reason to rush all this. That's why I think Iger was the real culprit in the sequel trilogy turning out the way it did. Because again, the release dates they mandated, it wasn't possible to have the same creative team in all three movies, even if they wanted to. But it's even worse to say that on top of that the director who they chose didn't even have a plan, and the studio didn't even have a plan. It's like, it's bizarre because under Lucas, Pablo Hidalgo and the story group were consultants. They were not they weren't really employed by the company. He talked his way into a job by exploiting Kennedy's lack of Star Wars knowledge, but then they weren't given any control over the films. It's like, oh, you can have control over the literary division, but we're not going to have any of that carry over to the movies. We don't really care about that. We're not going to trust you to write the movies, or not write them in terms of being screenwriters, but come up with a story.
But that was a huge mistake in my opinion. You just touched on two of the biggest mistakes they made.
Yeah.
One is the bifurcation of the literary stuff and I'll put it in like even like the TV stuff and the movie division. They should all be one thing. Yeah. And the story group should have had total control on the story, not the story as a whole. Where we start, where's the middle, where's the end?
Yeah, because they're already
all of the stuff in between, the movies and stuff that happen in between all of that. Of course, your creatives, your directors and writers can write and fill in those gaps, but you have to have. This is what Feige does so well. here's where we're at, here's where we're going, paint within these lines, right?
Plus, they're already contradicting themselves in the same way that the legends under Lucas became multiple levels of canon, and they're doing that again.
They're doing it because nobody had control to say no. Like that story group should have had control to say no.
Yeah, it's like, why isn't there consistency between even the novelizations of the movies themselves are not consistent with the movies? It's like, I have the book up there, The Last Jedi Expanded Edition. Mm-hmm. Well, some things are expanded, but there's a lot of things which happen very differently than they happen in the actual movie. Scenes that are in the movie that are written as happening differently in the book. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You know, it's like... Yeah, so that was a huge mistake they made, not having a plan, rushing the release dates. And now I get that Iger came to his senses when Solo flopped. Kennedy's like, see, I told you we shouldn't have rushed this. Right. He's like, okay, you're right. And then she did the right thing, which is what she probably wanted to do to begin with, which is put Filoni in charge of the TV thing, which is why TV's mostly been smooth sailing since then, except for the Book of Boba Fett, which I feel was, again, a total Disney mandate. That just feels like that doesn't feel like something Kennedy did. That feels more like a Disney corporate decision coming down.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Yeah, because they shoehorned it in.
Yeah, but then even then with those excuses she has for like Disney mandating this and mandating that, you should still as producer be on board with the people you're ultimately hiring for these jobs. It's like,
yes,
I don't get why it took till 3 weeks before the ending of filming on Solo for them to decide that it wasn't going to work. Like I remember in one interview, Alden Ehrenreich said, when I auditioned, I was auditioning for Han Solo, but when Lord and Miller were directing, it's like I was being directed to be parody. And which is why this whole stupid movement of people are like, the Lord and Miller thing would have been so much better. It's like, you've heard straight from the actors that it was being treated as parody under them. And that's not, like, for instance,
people were saying on set that it's Ace Ventura in Star Wars. And like, I don't want that.
That's not what Star Wars is. And that's why they ultimately replaced him. But the question is, when you're looking at the dailies, how did it take that long to realize it? And that's why I'm wondering if maybe something that Robert Meyer Burnett said the other day might be correct. Maybe the producers and the executive weren't looking at the dailies and they weren't paying attention.
Like, that blows me away.
Because remember, here's something
that's your job.
On the Marvel side of things, Feige was running such a tight ship in the first 3 phases. He did not even visit the set or check in on Ragnarok until like towards the end of filming for only like a couple days. Because that's how good everything was running over there. Right. Lucasfilm, it's like, you would have noticed it was parody within the first couple of weeks when and you waited like 4 or 5 months before you finally stepped in and were like, oh, we can't do it. It's like, who was not paying? How are you not paying attention to this? How do you not get that this is?
They must not have been watching. And that's probably right. Rob's probably right on that. That they weren't watching the dailies and they just kind of, oh, these things are going to be great. They'll make $1 billion. We can put out any piece of crap and it'll make $1 billion, and who cares? I hope that was willing to bet
that if Rise of Skywalker was not Episode 9 or any of the Skywalker saga movies, if it was just another movie, and when it got out how bad it was, it would not have made $1 billion.
No,
it would not have sniffed that.
Yeah, that movie is trash.
Yeah,
the admiral says Neil Breen is going to take over Marvel. He'll produce 16 movies for the price of one, and be the lead in all of them. Yeah, of course. I still think they need to. Star Wars needs to adapt some of these novels into movies. Make them cheap. You can make them on the cheap and put them right on Disney Plus. But tell those stories. They just they won't. They have such a hard time bringing people from the animation side or TV side up into the movies side, and I don't. It's
like certain things
in a weird way.
So I admit I'm not up to speed in all as many of the modern Star Wars books as you are, the Disney era books, but to my knowledge, they haven't contradicted anything from the Darth Plagueis novel. So why not do that? Like the fact that Ian is willing to play and come back and still do this at his age, is like, take advantage of that.
The first 4 movies I would make is I would do a trilogy of movies for the Darth Bane trilogy of books. Bane is canon in the new canon. So I do those 3, and then I do the Darth Plagueis book for sure. And then I'd move on. I do Lost Stars. I do Dark Disciple.
I would do a live-action Clone Wars movie with Ewan, Hayden, and Grievous, and that'd be a badass action. Like I mentioned, I don't know if I've told you about this, but one of my I think a great way they could introduce Thrawn would, for the casual fans, would be through a movie like Dunkirk, where you have very little exposition. It's just a battle, and you have him as the protagonist. He's the one organized in the war room, and you get to see his cunning and his villainy, and let it feel like that. I think that would be amazing. But the thing, they have all this material there, and they're not using any of it, and it's
and it goes back to Kathleen Kennedy's response to that question, and she's like, well, Marvel has all of this material to draw from, and I'm like, but so does Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I feel part of that is George Lucas. Obviously, he didn't like a lot of that published stuff either, so of course he didn't tell her about it. So it just kind of it's kind of, oh, we're gonna sell it up the river, and now it's like, I mean, I agree that having multiple levels of canon isn't a good thing. Like bringing it all in, great. Yeah. Legends, like Leland Shee said, the reason you put the Legends label on there instead of just saying it's non-canon is that because everything in Star Wars is somebody's favorite. Right. So the misconception that came out after that announcement was made in April 2014 that all the other levels of canon were becoming Legends was that, oh, it's not canon anymore. It's like, well, no, it still kind of is, just until something comes along to contradict it, which admittedly is not a great stable ground to go forward on. But at the same time, it kind of needed to happen because of how everything was contradicting themselves, which seemed to give a sign that they were going to keep things centralized and working. But the fact, like you said, that they bifurcated everything, it makes the fact that you declared all that stuff Legends kind of a moot point now because they're doing the same thing again.
Well, and then what they did was they, like we said earlier, they made the story group and then didn't give them any power to do anything. So then the movies and TV shows started kind of breaking canon. So
which is why they went out of their way to make that video showing that, oh, look, the High Republic series, we planned it this time. And it's like, yeah, but you're releasing that video at the same time you put out that Patty Jenkins video, which is really well done, and now you're not doing that either. So how can I trust anything they're announcing at the upcoming celebration? Answer: I can't.
I haven't liked anything in the High Republic.
Yeah, I haven't read any of it, but it's like, again, the fact that they sank money into it wasn't just a simple announcement. Oh, Patty Jenkins is gonna be doing this. They sank money into that shit.
It was fanfare. They had a TIE fighter replica on the tarmac, and she's skating around. It was a whole thing.
And it's like, I literally. That's why I wish I was at Celebration this year. I could get in line, and when they ask any questions, I'm like, well, is any of this actually going to happen after you sank all that money into a wonderful presentation of Patty Jenkins? That's not happening. Now the Lando series that you said was going to happen is probably not going to happen. Now this series is not going to happen.
Like, what do you say to that?
Exactly. And yeah, I get it. A lot of projects fall apart in Hollywood, but that's why you don't announce things until it's like set in stone and you're actually, cameras rolling. Or that kind of thing,
hopefully they've got a plan and they're executing on that plan, and we just don't know anything yet. But I really don't have a lot of faith in the leadership there. It's unfortunate because
for a vote of no confidence.
Besides the TV, which is in my opinion running strong,
which is a Favreau Filoni thing.
Yeah, they're in trouble with the movie side, and hopefully that turns around because we need movies. There's, like we said, there's plenty of room. We need movies. We need strong movies, billion-dollar films, and they don't have to be billion-dollar films, but good films in the in the theaters, and great fill-in storytelling, long-form storytelling on the TV side, and hopefully we get more series, more like Andor and more of the Mandalorian, this whole Favreau Filoni verse, which I think is working out well. I am excited for these new shows. I'm excited for Ahsoka. I'm excited even for the Skeleton Crew. That sounds good. I was excited for the Acolyte until I heard some weird stuff, but hopefully that comes out and is awesome too.
What'd you hear about that?
Just some of the writers not really knowing Star Wars, and some of their interactions on Twitter. I'm like, you don't have to. And if you're a good writer, you don't have to be steeped in the lore of Star Wars. But I think it helps.
Right. You can't have a disaster that was the Kenobi show, where you had one of the main writers in all 6 episodes, openly boasting that he hadn't seen episode 3. It said, look, I'll give you a pass for having not seen it when you got the job, but obviously you should feel obligated to watch it and immerse yourself in that, because
you have to
episode
do
3 is obviously the most important movie for the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship, and
absolutely.
And then you didn't bother watching it, and you're one of the only inconsistent writers on this series, and you didn't like. No wonder that series is trash.
Right.
It's like, and that had so many opportunities as well, and it just kind of, it's like, why is Leia here? What's going on with this Reva character? Why is he once again leaving Vader to live in a much less precarious situation than on Mustafar?
It's unfortunate because that had a promise, right? You're bringing back a beloved character. Man, it should have been one of the best things that Star Wars has put out, and unfortunately, it just was not.
Yeah, it felt like content for the sake of having content,
Yeah. And it's weird because
that one bit of Vader walking down the street and wrecking fools and killing the kid, that was good, but that was about it.
Yeah. Alrighty, so I think that'll do it for us today. Kat, with this, we went longer than we thought.
That's it. Our frustrations expanded into the same thing we were complaining about last week, and it continues.
Right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the Minds of Mandalore as much as we did. I do think this is on a good trajectory. We're back into fun Star Wars. I've liked this show since it started. It's fun Star Wars, like we said, as opposed to next week we're getting a longer episode, so we should next week we'll dive into that episode too. I'll pull out a bunch of slides and we'll do it like we did today. I think that was kind of fun. Gives us good reference points, to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. All right, so I think that'll do it for us. Do you have anything coming up this weekend other than maybe Sunday where we might do a spoiler
I got
review?
a couple things coming up this weekend. I got Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, next episode of the Unifying Force from the Virtual Cantina Network, talking about Mandalorians. Then around 9:30 or so, I'm not sure if it's live streaming or it's going to be recorded on, I think it's the Burnett Network, actually. We're going to do a thing called Cat's Corner where I show off some of my physical media.
Oh, cool.
Discuss that for a little bit, which will be helpful because I'll be able to promote the channel, which is why I said yes.
Awesome.
And then sometime later in the day, we'll hopefully do our spoiler reviews of 65 and Stream 6.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that'll do it for everybody. For Kat, I am Steve Foley. Have a great day, everybody.